let me talk to you for a moment, because this right here is some real life truth. I want to speak especially to the women, but fellas, you can listen too. Today, we're talking about 4 things that kill your value in front of a man. And listen carefully, because nobody teaches this in school, nobody puts this in a textbook, but life will teach it to you the hard way if you don't learn it now. Let me slow this thing down and talk to you plainly, because this right here changes everything. Overgiving without receiving respect is one of the fastest ways to lower your value in front of a man, and most people don't even realize when they're doing it. You think you're being loving, supportive, understanding, and patient, but what you're really doing is teaching someone that your effort comes cheap. See, when you give too much too soon, you remove the need for a man to step up. If you're always available, always paying, always calling, always fixing, always forgiving, always understanding, then where does his responsibility come in? A man respects effort when it costs something. If it doesn't cost him time, intention, consistency, or commitment, it doesn't register as valuable. Let me say this clearly, love that is handed out freely without standards will never be handled carefully. When you give without limits, people assume you'll always give, no matter how they show up. That's not love, that's self-neglect. And a man can feel that. He may not say it, but he senses when someone is trying too hard to keep him instead of letting him earn his place. Overgiving also sends a message that you're afraid to lose him. And fear is not attractive. Confidence is. A woman who knows her worth doesn't rush to prove it. She doesn't exhaust herself trying to convince someone to choose her. She understands that the right man will recognize value without being chased. When you overgive, you start doing things that should only come after commitment. Emotional labor, constant reassurance, unlimited access to your time, loyalty without clarity, these things are supposed to be earned. When they're given early, they lose meaning. A man starts to take them for granted because there was no process, no progression, no investment required. And here's the hard truth. People don't value what they didn't work for. That doesn't make a man bad. It makes him human. Value is tied to effort. If someone puts nothing in, they feel nothing to lose. But when effort is required, respect grows naturally. Overgiving also drains you. You start feeling unappreciated, overlooked, and emotionally exhausted. Then resentment creeps in, and now you're upset about things you never communicated or boundaries you never set. But the other person didn't cross a line. You never drew one. A woman with value understands balance. She gives kindness, but she expects respect. She offers love, but she requires consistency. She shows interest, but she doesn't abandon her standards. That balance creates intrigue, respect, and attraction. When you stop overgiving, you don't become cold, you become clear. You teach people how to treat you by what you allow and what you withhold until it's earned. And when a man realizes that access to you is a privilege, not a guarantee, he either rises to the occasion or removes himself. Either way, you win. Let me tell you something real, because this is where a lot of people lose themselves without even noticing it. Lack of self-respect will quietly destroy your value in front of a man long before he ever says a word about it. Self-respect isn't about being loud, aggressive, or demanding. It's about what you refuse to accept and how you respond when your boundaries are tested. When you don't respect yourself, you give permission for others to do the same. Every time you allow broken promises, careless words, late-night apologies, or inconsistent behavior, you're teaching a man exactly how little effort is required to keep you around. And trust me, people will always take the path of least resistance. If there are no consequences, there is no reason to change. Self-respect starts with how you speak about yourself. If you constantly downplay your needs, joke about your pain, or act like you don't care when you clearly do, you send a confusing message. A man watches how you treat yourself. If you dismiss your own feelings, he will too. If you make excuses for behavior that hurts you, he learns that accountability is optional. One of the biggest signs of low self-respect is staying silent to keep the peace. You convince yourself that speaking up might push him away, so you swallow your discomfort and smile through it. But peace that costs you your dignity is too expensive. Silence doesn't protect the relationship. It slowly destroys your sense of worth, and a man can feel that shift. Another thing people don't realize is that self, Respect shows up in what you walk away from. When you keep going back to situations that drain you, disrespect you, or make you question your value, you're sending a message that you don't believe you deserve better. A man may not say it out loud, but he notices when someone accepts crumbs and calls it love. Self-respect also means consistency in your standards. You can't demand honesty but tolerate lies. You can't ask for effort but accept neglect. Your actions must match your expectations. If they don't, your words lose power. A man doesn't respond to what you say you want. He responds to what you allow. Here's the truth: a woman with self-respect doesn't chase clarity. She requires it. She doesn't beg for attention. She notices patterns. She doesn't argue about her worth. She demonstrates it through her choices. And that kind of energy changes the dynamic completely. When you respect yourself, you become selective, not desperate. You stop explaining why you deserve basic decency. You stop negotiating your needs. You stop shrinking to be tolerated. And that shift is powerful because it forces a man to either step up or step aside. Self-respect is the foundation of value. Without it, nothing else holds. When you honor yourself, the right people honor you too, and the wrong ones reveal themselves quickly. Let me speak plainly about something that a lot of women overlook, but it's crucial if you want to maintain your value in front of a man. Ignoring boundaries is a silent killer of respect, attraction, and self-worth, and yet so many people do it every day without realizing the damage it causes. Boundaries are not about being difficult or cold. They are about protecting your energy, your emotions, and your sense of self. They are the lines that say, this is what I will accept, and this is what I will not. And if you fail to set them, you are giving away your power without a fight. When you ignore your own boundaries, you send a very clear message that your comfort, your feelings, and your time are negotiable. A man can sense that immediately. If he knows he can overstep without consequence, he will. It doesn't matter how kind or loving you are. Without boundaries, respect becomes optional, and the relationship becomes one-sided. You may think you are being nice or understanding, but in reality, you are teaching people how to treat you, and if you teach them poorly, they will take advantage. Boundaries are also about timing and prioritization. For example, if you are always available, answering calls at all hours, rearranging your life at a moment's notice, and never saying no, you are not being flexible, you are being exploited. A woman with value knows that her time is precious, and she does not give it away freely to anyone who hasn't earned it. Respecting your own schedule and commitments shows a man that you have a life, a purpose, and a standard, and that in itself is magnetic. Emotional boundaries are even more important. If you allow someone to repeatedly hurt your feelings or manipulate your emotions, you are essentially saying, it's okay to treat me poorly. This lowers your value immediately because no man respects someone who tolerates behavior that undermines their dignity. When you establish emotional boundaries, you are saying, I will not allow behavior that disrespects me, and if it happens, there are consequences. And consequences create accountability. A man who knows he can't cross certain lines without repercussions will step up or step away, but either way, your value remains intact. Another point to consider is that ignoring boundaries often comes from fear of losing someone, fear of being alone, fear that asserting yourself might seem too much. Let me tell you something: the wrong man will leave anyway, and the right man will stay and rise to the level of respect you require. Boundaries do not push the right person away. They filter out the wrong ones. A woman who maintains her boundaries is not controlling. She is demonstrating self-worth, and that is incredibly attractive. Boundaries also protect your mental and emotional health. Constantly bending over backward for someone else while sacrificing your needs creates stress, resentment, and emotional fatigue. When your boundaries are clear, you preserve your peace, your confidence, and your sense of control. You no longer react to situations out of desperation or fear. You respond from a place of strength. Ladies and gentlemen, when a woman ignores boundaries, she loses more than respect. She loses the power to shape how she is treated. Every time you compromise on your limits, you make it easier for someone to undervalue you. But when you define your standards, communicate them clearly, and enforce them consistently, you not only protect yourself, but you also teach others how to honor you. Boundaries are not walls. They are doors that allow the right people in and keep the wrong people out. And in the end, protecting your boundaries is one of the most powerful ways to maintain your value in front of any man. Ladies and gentlemen, let me talk to you about something that destroys a woman's value faster than almost anything else: desperation. Desperation is a silent, invisible force that can completely change the way a man sees you, and most women don't even realize when it's creeping in. It doesn't come from wanting a relationship, a connection, or love. It comes from fear. Fear of being alone, fear of losing him, fear that someone else will take what you think you're entitled to. And when fear drives your actions, it doesn't just affect how he sees you, it affects how you see yourself. When you act desperate, you give away your power. Suddenly, your worth is no longer in what you bring, your confidence, your personality, or your standards. It's in how much you chase, how much you tolerate, and how much you compromise. A desperate energy is a low-value energy. A man feels it instantly, even if he can't put it into words. He doesn't respect it. He doesn't desire it. And in many cases, he starts to take advantage of it. Desperation makes you cling, apologize excessively, over-communicate, and bend over backward for validation that should never be necessary. Think about it, Tay. When you start texting too much, answering calls too fast, agreeing to things you don't want to do, or constantly seeking reassurance, you're showing that your happiness depends on him. And let me be honest, no man wants to be someone's entire world. Confidence is attractive, purpose is attractive, and independence is magnetic. A woman who can live her life fully, who knows her worth, and who doesn't compromise her peace to please someone else creates a natural pull that desperation can never replicate. Desperation also clouds judgment. When fear drives your decisions, you tolerate behavior that you would normally reject. You stay in situations that don't serve you, accept treatment that undermines your dignity, and lower your standards because you are afraid to walk away. Over time, this not only damages how a man perceives you, it erodes how you perceive yourself. You start to believe you are lucky to have someone who may not even value you, and that belief becomes a pattern that keeps repeating itself. One of the most dangerous things about desperation is that it makes you predictable. A man will notice that you overextend, that you overcommunicate, that you always say yes. When someone has nothing to earn to keep your attention or affection, your presence loses its weight. Attraction is built on challenge, respect, and balance. Desperation removes all three. The antidote to desperation is self-sufficiency. Not financial self-sufficiency alone, but emotional and mental independence as well. A woman who is confident has her own goals, her own life, her own peace, and her own standards doesn't need constant validation. She makes it clear that she is available for love, but not dependent on it for survival or happiness. That's not coldness. That's strength. That's value. And that strength forces a man to step up or step aside. Ladies and gentlemen, desperation does more than scare a man off. It communicates that you don't believe in your own worth. And if you don't believe it, nobody else will. But when a woman walks with confidence, sets her standards, protects her peace, and refuses to chase validation, she radiates value. That kind of energy isn't just attractive, it's irresistible. Desperation kills value. Confidence preserves it. And knowing the difference can change everything. Ladies and gentlemen, let me break this down for you, because inconsistency is one of the sneakiest things that kills a woman's value in front of a man, and most people don't even realize it until it's too late. When your words, actions, and behaviors don't align, it creates confusion, doubt, and ultimately a lack of respect. People can tolerate small mistakes or occasional missteps, but inconsistency is different. It signals that you are unreliable, that your standards are negotiable, and that your sense of self may not be steady. And let me tell you, a man picks up on this energy immediately, whether he consciously knows it or not. Inconsistency shows up in so many ways. It could be the way you say one thing and do another. You may tell him that honesty is important, yet you hide your feelings or sugarcoat the truth to avoid confrontation. You may claim that you expect respect, but then tolerate behavior that falls far short of that standard. You might say you value yourself and your time, yet you constantly cancel your own plans or overextend yourself to accommodate him. Every time your words and actions don't match, you chip away at your credibility. A man doesn't just see what you say, he feels the patterns in your behavior. And when those patterns are inconsistent, he doesn't know what to expect, which erodes attraction and trust. Another form of inconsistency is emotional unpredictability. When your moods swing dramatically from one extreme to another, or your reactions vary based on circumstances, it sends mixed signals. One day you are warm and inviting, the next day distant and cold. One day you are patient, the next day quick to judge or criticize. A man doesn't understand the rules, and when he doesn't understand the rules, he becomes hesitant or careless. He may even start testing boundaries just to see how far he can go, because inconsistency communicates that consequences are unclear or non-existent. Emotional steadiness is powerful. It communicates that you are in control, that you are self-aware, and that you respect both yourself and the people around you. Inconsistency also damages your self-respect. Every time you behave in a way that contradicts your stated values or standards, you reinforce a habit of compromise that can quickly become destructive. You start to doubt yourself, and that doubt shows up in your presence, your speech, and your energy. A man can sense self-doubt, and it diminishes your perceived value. Confidence is attractive, and confidence comes from clarity and alignment. When you are consistent, your presence communicates certainty, stability, and reliability, all qualities that elevate your worth in anyone's eyes. The consequences of inconsistency extend beyond perception. They affect the relationship itself. A man who experiences inconsistency from you will struggle to trust you fully. He may question your intentions, your commitment, or even your authenticity. Trust is built on predictability, reliability, and integrity. Without those pillars, a relationship becomes shaky and respect erodes faster than any argument could ever cause. A woman who is inconsistent sends a subtle message. I may not be dependable, and neither may my feelings or my decisions. And once that message is received, it is difficult to undo. The antidote is simple, though not always easy alignment. Align your words, your actions, and your energy. Be mindful of the promises you make, the standards you set, and the behaviors you exhibit. Don't say one thing and do another, because every small contradiction chips away at your value. Be emotionally consistent, predictable in your integrity, and clear in your expectations. When a man sees that your behavior matches your words, he respects you more than any speech could ever convey. Alignment communicates confidence, clarity, and control, and it automatically increases your perceived value. Consistency is not about rigidity, it's about reliability. It's about showing up in a way that reflects your values and your standards and your self-respect. A man doesn't need perfection. He needs predictability in terms of respect, honesty, and integrity. When you demonstrate those qualities consistently, you create a foundation of trust and attraction that cannot easily be shaken. You no longer have to prove your value because your consistent behavior proves it for you. Ladies and gentlemen, a woman who is inconsistent may confuse, frustrate, or even repel a man without ever realizing it. But a woman who is consistent radiates strength, trustworthiness, and self-respect. She sets the standard, she communicates clearly, and she lives in alignment with her values. And when she does, her value is undeniable. Inconsistency kills value. Alignment preserves it. And mastering this distinction can completely change the way you are perceived, not just by a man, but by the world. Ladies and gentlemen, let me take a moment to talk about something that is absolutely crucial when it comes to maintaining your value in front of a man, and that is forgetting your self-worth. This may sound simple, but it is one of the most destructive things a woman can do without even realizing it. Your self-worth is the foundation upon which every relationship, interaction, and choice is built. When you forget it, you allow others to determine your value for you, and that is a recipe for disappointment, frustration, and a loss of respect. Forgetting your self-worth starts subtly. It begins when you prioritize someone else's approval over your own peace, when you excuse behavior that makes you uncomfortable, or when you settle for less than what you know you deserve. You may think you are being loving or accommodating, but what you are actually doing is telling the world that your happiness, your dignity, and your needs are optional. And once you send that message, people, especially men, will subconsciously treat you according to what you tolerate, not according to what you deserve. When you forget your self-worth, Desperation creeps in, and with it, a series of decisions that slowly erode your value. You may find yourself chasing attention, seeking validation, or over-compromising in ways that make you invisible in the process. You begin to over-apologize for things that aren't your fault, overgive to prove your love, and overextend yourself to maintain someone's interest. This is dangerous because it communicates that you do not see your own value. A man does not want a woman who must convince him to care, because love and respect should never have to be negotiated. Forgetting your self-worth also impacts your boundaries. When you don't remember how valuable you are more likely to accept behavior that undermines your dignity. You stay in situations that are emotionally draining, tolerate inconsistency, and overlook disrespectful actions. You may even convince yourself that you are lucky to have someone in your life, when in reality, you should be asking whether they are lucky to have you. Boundaries are meaningless if you don't believe your own worth. They only work when they are rooted in self-respect. Another major effect of forgetting your self-worth is how it affects your confidence. Confidence is magnetic. It's what draws the right people to you naturally. But when you doubt your value, you project insecurity, uncertainty, and neediness. You start second-guessing your actions, overthinking interactions, and questioning whether you are enough. And unfortunately, a man feels that energy. He senses when someone believes in themselves and when someone relies on external validation. Forgetting your self-worth diminishes your natural magnetism, making it harder for the right person to see you as the incredible woman you truly are. Forgetting your self-worth also makes you reactive rather than proactive. Instead of making deliberate choices that protect your energy and honor your needs, you find yourself constantly reacting to other people's behavior. You may compromise your standards to avoid conflict, stay silent to prevent confrontation, or constantly adjust to someone else's schedule, desires, or expectations. When you do this, you lose your power, and with it, your perceived value. People are drawn to women who move with intention, who make decisions confidently, and who know what they will and will not accept. The antidote is simple, but it requires vigilance and self-awareness. You must continuously remind yourself of your value. You must recognize your strengths, honor your feelings, uphold your standards, and refuse to let anyone dictate how much you are worth. Self-worth is not static. It requires active maintenance through the choices you make, the boundaries you enforce, and the way you carry yourself in every situation. A woman who remembers her self-worth does not beg, does not chase, and does not tolerate disrespect. She commands respect effortlessly because she knows who she is and what she deserves. Ladies and gentlemen, forgetting your self-worth is like giving someone else the keys to your life and expecting them to treat it with care. But when you remember your value, you control the narrative. You set the tone, you enforce boundaries, and you demand respect without ever having to ask for it. Your self-worth is your power, your strength, and your value all rolled into one. Never forget it, because the moment you do, you risk losing not only a man's respect, but also the respect you owe yourself. A woman who knows her worth radiates confidence, attracts the right people, and sets the standard for how she will be treated in every area of life. Remembering your self-worth isn't just important, it's essential, and it is the key to preserving your value in front of any man.